But we're going to begin today with the Nifal. And if you were to look at Genesis chapter 12 and verse 3, it says, and in you, speaking to Abram, and in you and all the families of the earth shall be blessed. That shall be blessed is from the Hebrew Niphal, nivreku. Nifreku is a perfect third person common plural with a verb conjunction that I didn't pronounce. Um, the Nifal here is not really just grammatical in of itself, but there's a theological. I just say theological because I really don't like to tie theological to the grammar, but oftentimes the grammar points towards a theological emphasis, and that emphasis is here. It's in a passive form, and that's what we're going to learn. The difference between the call stem, call stem has an active voice as well as a active active kind of not active an action that's more nuanced or more excuse me simple. And so we're going to see the same kind of action. The type of action is more simple kind of action, but we move from a active voice to a passive voice in most cases. And so here the Nifal is passive, and although someone might look at it to be potentially reflective, we'll talk about that in a moment. But it communicates, at a very minimum, the nations are not blessing themselves, they are receiving a blessing. And of course, the subject of nations is being acted upon. So the passive voice is being brought out in the Nifal. And the point is that God is the source providing the blessing. Abraham's the conduit for the blessing upon. That's the nations are other recipients. So the nations are receiving the blessing through Abraham from God. And so watch what happens as Paul looks at this in Galatians chapter 3 in verse 8. The scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel beforehand to Abraham. You see what it did here? The scripture, foreseeing that God would do what? Justify the Gentiles by faith, did what? Preach the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, in you shall all the nations shall be blessed. In you shall all the nations be blessed. And so Paul treats Genesis chapter 12:3 as sort of the seed for the gospel in seed form, the gospel in you shall all the nations be blessed, and bringing justification language into in the New Testament, into Galatians, as a promise to the Gentiles. He connects the blessings that is in you shall all the nations shall be blessed with the justification by faith, that God would justify the Gentiles by faith. So it's not accidental. The Nifal in Genesis says the nations will be blessed. God is the source. Abraham's the conduit. The nations are the recipients. And Galatians says that the blessings is justified by faith. So the structure looks like this in Genesis. The passive reception of the blessings to all nations. In Galatians, that passive reception to all nations is understood as justification by faith, and the ultimate conclusion is that salvation is received, not achieved. So in Genesis, the grammar here of the Nifal sort of gives us a hint, a whisper of what is intended, and the New Testament, of course, brings this out very consistently in that all nations shall be blessed through justification by faith into salvation.